Hi, I'm Esther.
And I'm Sean.
I write about AI news here at TechTarget.
And I edit Esther's stories.
We're here to talk to tech experts about everything AI, from open and closed models to AI agents and who's ahead in the generative AI race.
And even the elusive AGI.
We've got it covered, right, Sean?
Yep, we've got it covered.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the latest episode of the Targeting AI podcast. Today, Sean and I are speaking with Michelle Bonat, Chief AI Officer at AI Squared. AI Squared is an AI and data integration platform. Before AI Squared, Michelle was the AI CTO at JP Morgan and Chase. Before then, she was the co-founder of a SaaS platform called Data Simply, and she was recently named to the AI 150 list and holds patents in machine learning. Thank you so much for joining us on today's podcast, Michelle.
Thank you for having me, Esther and Sean.
Okay, so to kick us off, we want to hear about your path to AI technology and data. How'd you become interested in AI tech? And what led you to start a SaaS company? And how did you end up at JP Morgan Chase?
So many great questions. um, so I started my career really on the pure tech side, engineering in product, and then I became more and more technical, managing large engineering teams at Oracle. And then I really saw the opportunity for data, right? So I started to work more in the data space and then more in the machine learning space. And then, you know, as Gen AI came to the fore, really pressing forward on that. And so I'd say what drove me or what drives me is, the technology is fun, of course, but it's really how it helps us live our life, run better businesses, solve problems. It's the applied AI aspect that I'm really drawn to.
Interesting. So, obviously, you're now with AI Squared. What is AI Squared? How did you get into it? And what is the goal for enterprise customers?
Yeah. So as you mentioned, after I founded my own fintech, uh, data and AI fintech, I went over to JP Morgan Chase. And so I came in as the leading AI innovation for Chase. So adding AI into our, more than 90 products, 40.5 billion monthly logins, doing that at immense scale. And then based on that success, became an AI CTO in the organization, essentially, productionizing those initiatives. And what I found was that while, it was terrific to have the immense resources and frankly, best in class talent at JP Morgan, there were some parts of the, journey that were always bumpy, across the industry. And that was specifically around how you do the last mile integration and get user feedback. And that's really where AI squared started, right? So the initial core of AI squared was applied to the military intelligence community. So our CEO came from the NSA. Our first customer was the NSA, and the problem to be solved was how do you get insights to the, fighters in the field while you have a lot of legacy applications, you have all these integrations, these gnarly integrations, and it takes a long time and it's expensive. And once you make a change, you have to make it again. So, no surprise when these federal organizations, began to uptake AI squared platform. Financial services took note because financial services loved anything that is, used by Fed and military intelligence. And so when I joined, we really started to build that, you know, um, uh, financial services sort of industry presence and directly translating from what I found in my experience at JP Morgan that operationalizing the ML, particularly in the last stages, was difficult, and then optimizing, experimenting, getting feedback from users, and bringing that full circle. I was a need I had as a user in the market, and that's what really drove me to AI squared.
With your focus on data, what is your data strategy, or what was it at Chase, at JP Morgan Chase, and now? And what was your data strategy, and how did it align with AI?
So I can't share details of, certainly at Chase, the data strategy, other than it's, everything we did there was to really serve customers, right? And so overall strategy is very customer first, customer privacy first. And so that really informs everything there. I'd love to talk about what uh, data strategy in general and how businesses can really optimize that, particularly for AI and why it's important.
Go ahead.
Sure, sure, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, one thing we often hear, right, is garbage in, garbage out, of course, right? So the better data you have, the better your AI um, can be. And that goes without saying. That's nothing new. What what awareness has come about, I'd say, in the past, couple quarters as we're here in the top of 2025, is that particularly as Gen AI has come to fore, data has become more important. Data strategy has become more important, which is really interesting, right? And why is that? Well, there's a few reasons. One is, how do you do that with security, privacy, particularly how do you do that responsibly, which is, the topic that we're thinking about today, responsible AI. And how do you use your data to drive personalization, customer experience, right? We've heard multiple use cases there with, call centers and marketing. And so as Gen AI has become more important in the conversation, that really connects with data strategy, data quality, data cleanliness, and also ultimately in responsible AI and governance within the organization, right? So, we've heard all kinds of stories about chatbots that gave, bad insights that someone thought were true, right? Whether that's an attorney that, uses a chatbot to research a legal case, and they go in front of the court and the legal cases are made up by the chatbot, and the court case gets thrown out, right? We've heard all those stories, right? And so the underlying piece of that is actually data. So, really simply, Gen AI becoming more important in the conversation has made data quality, data strategy, a good data strategy, even more important in the conversation.
Do you think that it is because of that data strategy that having a good data strategy would make it more better for the end user? Because at the beginning, you spoke about obviously, dealing with these legacy applications and these legacy technology. When you're trying to transfer it over to the person that's actually going to use it, it becomes like a really big deal, right? So, is the data strategy really the foundation that's really needed for that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And folks are realizing that more and more, which is so interesting, right? Because you would have, you might have thought, well, Gen AI boldly into the future and data strategy has been around forever, right? But now they're very much connected. And so, imagine, as we hear about these RAG chatbots, right? Retrieval augmented generation chatbots that take data from your, individual information database and add to what the LLM is serving back, the chatbot is serving back, and actually do that, at time of inference. So do it when you ask it the question, right? That's all data, right? So you need to give it the um, good data, quality data, available data, right? So it really gets back to the data question.
Previously spoke offline, you mentioned the opportunity to use AI to transform industries. In what ways have you seen AI transform industries, especially finance? Like you mentioned before, the financial industry prefers to use whatever the Fed use. So can you expand a little bit on that?
we can think about it at two levels. One is at the, um, art of the possible, be a global innovator level. So, certainly at Chase at JP Morgan, we wanted to, bring the best to our customers, right? In a way that's fair and responsible and ethical and maintain data privacy and absolutely right. But we needed to innovate. We needed to innovate because banking is really competitive and, as a top brand, customers want the best, for them. So that I would call it a pushing forward on the art of the possible. Other people would call it FOMO, fear of missing out, right? So you need to innovate, and that's a way to do it. Um, how AI is transforming financial services in general, there's so many use cases we see, and organizations across all sizes and all stages of the journey are really, you know, embracing that in a very thoughtful, careful way, certainly because it's a regulated industry, right? But using that to transform, everything from, we as customers, we as, users also experience, right? Transform the front-facing customer experience. I'd say not just financial services, a bank, but almost any company where you go onto their website, you expect to see a chatbot. Right? You don't have a chatbot, you're not serving me. So financial services really has to press forward and innovate because they are up against very stringent competition, and so they do that. So it's call centers, it's fraud and risk management. So those are some of the earliest use cases that started with predictive AI, and now I've added a Gen AI capability. What I see over and over again, and best practices that financial services organizations and really any organization, they start at the H1, they start at the Horizon 1, particularly for Gen AI or any AI. They start with the use cases that are typically inward facing, lower risk, right? Simpler, right? And once they've gotten their legs under them, they move to more the Horizon 2 or Horizon 3, customer facing, right in the, core part of their operations, and really grow it from there. So I'd say that work started, particularly in financial services, started in 2025, even with Gen AI. We heard all about that, or in 2024. In 2025, really one of the mantras we hear over and over again is, ROI. Show me the ROI. Show me the ROI of your Gen AI, right? And so that is a topic that's very top of mind. Not just, put up a chat bot, but innovate on that, use Gen AI in other ways. And, from a organization perspective, show me how it's helping the business. Am I increasing efficiency? Am I, getting innovation faster? All the ways that are possible, actually measure it for me and demonstrate that it helps me run my business better.
Okay, so I think a lot of enterprises are thinking about data quality, and there's a lot of new data quality tools and data governance tools. And so, how
Mhm.
does bad quality data affect the uptake of Gen AI technologies?
So in my experience, the uptake is not slower with bad data. Any organization, really feels, many organizations feel they need to be in the mix, right? So let's put up a chat bot, right? And they may not realize at the time how data may affect the experience um, until they get into it. And so, if you look at the statistics, many organizations started with Gen AI in 2024. Most of them I've heard would say that they are not optimized, or even they sometimes put a pause. And when you ask them that, one of the top reasons is actually because of data quality, or data, you know, data cause things that have happened that are caused by data. So, for example, hallucinations, right? LLMs, they make things up. That is how they work, right? If they don't have a perfect answer, they will give you an answer, they will make up an answer, right? There's techniques to, you know, have them do that less or create guardrails and create guardrails around topics they can answer or uh, things like that. Having said that, it's, goes back to the data question, right? So, um, it really goes back to the data question, which is so fundamentally interesting as, Gen AI expands and expands, and we hear every day, especially in this week news of, for example, DeepSeek, came out and really shook up the foundational AI industry. Really, the fundamentals are the fundamentals, and I guess, that is um, in perfect line with what we would all expect.
What would you say is the best way to ensure data safety?
The fundamentals are a solid data strategy, right? So you want to have in mind your regulatory compliance and risk management for whatever country you're in. You want to look at your um, scalability. So are your data sets well organized? Do you have a good infrastructure for that, whether you're in the cloud or on premise? Um, do you can you deliver that in ways that are cost efficient for you? So depending on, where organizations are in the journey, they may be in the cloud, they may be on premise, they may be hybrid, right? Still some organizations, particularly in secure governed industries, they may have some data in the cloud and they may have the more personal data, not in the cloud, right? On premise, which is a great strategy. So, what is your organizational strategy to get there, to get that security, privacy, responsible use of data? And then, what is what are your security protections? So the, large cloud providers have easy, I should say, ways to enable that are built in. But what is your, security plan for your data? Encryption, access controls, and all that. And, really having those things I mentioned in place is the fundamental basics of data strategy, whether you're doing AI or not, or until you're ready to do AI and, across your AI journey.
Okay, sounds good. So let's switch gears to more newsy stuff that's happening in the
Right,
news right now. You mentioned DeepSeek. Esther's been grappling with DeepSeek all week, writing about that whole thing. And Alibaba came out with a copycat chatbot a couple of years ago as well. And so ByteDance is trying to do that. Anyway, so we
right,
have this new administration, and Esther's been writing about this too, and I've been editing it. And the recent news about the AI executive order. So it's the executive order, the new executive order gets rid of the AI safety order. And
right.
so, what are some thoughts you have on AI safety as we think of it, and the approach or non-approach the Trump administration has taken on AI safety? And do you think it's like a free for all now that, or can vendors self-regulate by building own guardrails? I mean, can vendors and enterprises like build their own AI safety outside of
Can they? Yes. Will
yeah?
they? That's the question, right? Um, where the new administration in the US is going, um, no one can say, right? Is it different from the old administration? Certainly is. But we knew this was coming, right? So we knew that um, it's very, very different from the EU AI Act, right? Which literally prescribes ways that LLMs need to be observed, analyzed and managed, right? So we don't at all have that in the US, and we actually didn't even have that under Biden, right, at this point. So the US, where will we go on regulations, under this new administration? of course, right, we have every indication that it's more hands off. Some people think that's a good thing. People think that's a bad thing. I think that's, likely a whole nother podcast. Um, but so from a um, responsible AI perspective, the way I think about it and what Etzer, you and I were talking about the other day is that how can this be a competitive advantage for businesses, for organizations using AI? And frankly, why would they pay attention to um, ethical, responsible AI if they don't legally need to yet, right? Is a really interesting question, right? So why is responsible AI a priority business for businesses? So, some organizations um, it's a very easy choice for them. They will say, well, our mantra across our entire strategy is be trustworthy, ethical, and have the, um, uh, privacy and rights of our customers, front and center, right? Organizations like Chase, that is their mantra, that is their business model, right? Other organizations may not think about it that way for whatever reasons. Perhaps they're earlier in the life cycle of data or AI, right? Perhaps they're, sorting it out. So why should more broadly organizations think about responsible AI? And what I'll say is it's because it benefits their business. It benefits their business because it benefits their customers. They will be more competitive and their business will do better. So specifically why. Um, One reason is trust and brand reputation. So customers want AI systems they can trust. They want companies they know they can work with ethically. And so being um, transparent about your and having responsible AI helps increase your brand reputation, helps increase the trust of your customers, right? Proactively. Reactively, nobody wants to be have to respond reactively when there's a AI bias, misinformation, unethical use. Um, you know, of course, you don't want that tarnishing your brand reputation, but you don't want that as a bad customer experience because, as we all know these days, a bad customer experience travels really, really quickly, through the where people talk, right, and online and all that. So, being proactive and having that way to um, I'd say continue to expand your trust, expand and, even further improve your brand reputation is a business advantage, right? Especially if it's not legally required, right? If you're the one of the few doing it in your industry, perhaps the only one, you'll be the star. You'll have an advantage. It is a business advantage. It's a competitive advantage um, to have responsible AI. I'm completely convinced.
So, quick follow up. You at the beginning of that part, you said that you raised the question of will enterprises, but it sounds
Mhm.
like you think they should, and they are the larger, bigger brands, and especially is that true? I
I hope
mean,
they are. I hope they are. How do you do that is the question. I wouldn't say, if you put you know, a group of senior executives in the room and you said, do you want to do responsible AI? Of course, right? Do you want to have your brand continue to be trusted? Of course, right? Nobody will say, I don't want that. Um, Really, the operationalizing that is the new part, is the some of the challenge, right? And so the organizations that and this is a dialogue in the industry that have done this the best, what I hear over and over again is that it's not a separate process, it's not a separate group. So the ethical, responsible AI, the safety, security is not a separate initiative. It's woven into the operations at really every stage, right? And we see that over and over again for the most successful organizations, and we see them mindfully um, understanding how to run their business and incorporating that into their uh, operation. So, what do I mean by that? So, the challenges or opportunity can crop up at every stage of the life cycle, right? So everything from uh, data bias to model bias to, you know, if you think of the endpoint as the GenAI chatbot, someone can, you know, try to attack your chatbot by adding bad actor commands as an end user, right? That's even possible. And so to put in a process that, again, not a separate group, not a separate mandate, not a separate, these KPIs are everybody's KPIs, everybody's OKRs, that as you operationalize it, it's the same conversation in the room as you're looking at your data, as you're building your models, as you're testing your models, as you're putting your models into production, as you're, you know, um, iterating and tuning your models, all part of the same conversation. And that's what we see the most successful organizations are doing.
Do you think that this is what all should be doing regardless of competition? And when I like say geopolitical competition, because part of the I guess the route that the new administration wants to take is the idea of like the US needs to come out on top. I mean, if you look at
Right.
the new EO that just came out, and it's like making the AI, the US the leader in AI, right? And
Right, which
so
is great. Mhm.
can we do that and still be responsible? Especially because the argument that I've heard is that a lot of when we talk about China, we talk about DeepSeek, are not doing it responsibly. And so if we have
Mm.
businesses or enterprises saying, well, they're not doing it responsibly, so why should we do it responsibly? Then is that a good argument to make?
So
Or
that I love that question, right? I love that discussion. I come back to, you know, what's the best for the customer, and what's the best for the customer will ultimately bring success for the organization, right? And so, you know, do you want your customer to get hallucination, bad answers, incorrect answers, made up answers for important just dialogue, right? um you know do you want that to reflect poorly on your business, your brand? Do you want to, you know potentially have legal action taken against you because an AI running on its own decided to deny a loan application for someone because they were in a less targeted group, right? That, that is, I suggest a problem waiting to happen, right? Um, and so I find it's often a bandwidth issue, right? So, the younger companies, the startup companies, if they're not a responsible ethical AI pure play, they need to particularly look at, when they're designing their data, ML, AI strategy, really have that responsible ethical AI hand in hand as part of their strategy. So every time I, you know, craft a strategy, responsible and ethical AI is part of the strategy. So it has to be a conversation in the room. It can't be the conversation in a different room.
Certain vendors are taking explicitly pro responsible AI positions, like Anthropic, let's say.
Right.
And on the
Right.
other hand, and that's one of them, and there's others. On the other hand, you have like OpenAI, which released its economic blueprint right before Trump's inauguration, and they quite pretty much called for minimal regulation. And they do have a responsible AI a division within our office within OpenAI, but they don't talk a lot about it
Right.
as the top goal, and then
Right.
maybe Google is somewhere in the middle. So, are there are those currents so likely to be in opposition going forward, like that tension between accelerating and then focusing on AI safety and responsibility?
So one way to think about it is as the data scientist ML engineer is choosing what model to use because they have a choice on what model to use, how much the aspects purely outside performance influence that choice, right? So, if you're in your cloud provider, if you're in Hugging Face, if you're in AWS, for example, you can choose which LLM you're using, right? These days, you can, even more easily look at the performance and what you'll see in readout discussion is a stack of performance, right? Based on the different model that was tried and how well it performed, with your data, right? Um, will that discussion incorporate responsible and ethical AI? That's the question, right? Um, how does that, call it project level operationalizing tie to the, you know, perhaps, person in the corner office saying we need to be, have a trustworthy brand with transparent AI, right? That's frankly, that's the job of the chief AI officer. It should be in their job, right? To bring those pieces together and to bring the responsible, ethical strategy, but also activity and operationalizing into the same discussion in the room as part of the strategy. And often, right now, it is very different discussions by different folks in different groups at different levels of what they're doing in the organization. That's
That's
been the challenge. It's not
that's
that
really cool. It would be
nobody
great.
wants to do the right thing, it's just operationalizing is difficult.
So you're saying like put it in the benchmark, so you have all your speed and reasoning benchmarks. Add this as a benchmark as well.
Absolutely. Put it in people's OKRs, right? Um, so every data scientist OKR, so that's one thing I was working on at JPMC, right? Put into every, data scientist OKR, responsible, ethical, goal, right?
Good idea.
Gee, what would you say for those who say that not having that responsible AI strategy is going to ultimately slow down adoption of these Gen AI technology?
Not having it will slow it down, or having it will slow it
Like
down. I think
not
there's
being
arguments on both sides, right? We'll see. We'll see after.
Wait, I have a quick follow
Um,
up on that though. Like, I heard yesterday somebody was saying, well, EU has got this pretty solid AI regulation. We have none.
right.
We had none under Biden either, really. And I was asking, how can you deregulate something that's already deregulated? But um, might the U.S. and China really accelerate far past Europe because they have these go slow and careful, and
Right.
we in China have this accelerated mindset.
Absolutely. I mean, what I hear from people in Europe is that they, from an AI innovation perspective, they very much feel their hands are tied. Um, and it's become so onerous for certain situations, certain use cases, certain models that it just takes longer. Um, and so competitively, folks I've talked to do feel that puts them as a disadvantage to innovate with AI. Absolutely. Some of them were considering moving, you know, out of that. Um, uh, it's such a great question, right? Is that a reason to not do it? No. What's the right way to do it? I think we'll only know the right way to do it, 5 or 10 years down the road, right? But, it's a very, very different landscape depending on geographically where you sit. to do your work and where your company is located, absolutely.
So, I wanted to know, like, what challenges do you expect as an AI ethicist like yourself to face in this administration? And is your advice to enterprises around responsible AI in this with this administration?
I love that question. I don't actually feel that my choices or my questions have changed. My moral compass is still at what I consider a true north, right? And whatever, president is in the seat, that doesn't change my, North Star moral compass, really at all, right? And so, why is that? It's because I see the bottom line benefit to businesses that take a responsible and ethical AI approach. And that is, completely clear to me. Um, Going forward, what does that look like? I would hope that all businesses would realize that. If they don't, that's a huge competitive advantage to the ones that do. And, just as perhaps way back when companies, can you imagine now a company that said, gosh, should we have a good customer experience? Should we have customer trust? Should we have a good, customer uh, support and experience organization? Nah, we won't do that because, it doesn't bring in revenue, right? I expect that'll be the discussion or some of the revelation around ethical, responsible AI, down the road. Um, but until then, again, the companies that really take advantage of the opportunity around ethical, responsible AI to reinforce their brand, deliver terrific customer experience will win, and those that don't will not.
Well, thanks so much, Michelle. We appreciate you not dodging some of our questions where we kind of
Of
put you
course.
on the spot a little bit with potentially divisive, topics these days. And you did a really good
Right.
job of articulating both all the views in there and while sticking to your values. So we appreciate it. So thanks for being with us. To our audience, please connect with Michelle on LinkedIn and please share this pod on LinkedIn, on Instagram, YouTube, anywhere you get. And you can find our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, Google, pretty much everywhere. So thank you. We'll see you next time, audience, on Informa Tech Target's Targeting AI podcast. Thank you so much, Michelle.
Well, thank you so much, Sean and Esther. I always enjoy the conversation. Thank you for having me.